Hi, boys and girls. I have a different kind of book for us today. This book is called What Were You Thinking? Picture of the little guy. It says, "Hi, my name is Brayden, and I'm in the 3rd grade. Just so you know, I'm probably the funniest kid in school. Seriously, I have made some kids cry and almost wet their pants because we were laughing so hard. I'm hilarious. Anyway, this year at school, it started the same way as it does every year. The teacher explains all the rules, we practice the rules, and then we practice them some more. Don't teachers realize 3rd graders know how to follow the rules? Well, on Friday, I realized why we follow the rules. My teacher began class by saying, "Good morning, boys and girls. Today we are going to..." That's when it just happened. I shouted out, "Talk about how awesome I am." The class giggled. My teacher, Mrs. Bickerman, said, "Whoa, Brayden, we have rules to follow in this class. Is interrupting when I'm talking to the class following those rules?" "No, I guess it isn't being respectful," I answered. But he thought he was going to make everyone laugh. Right. Remember, the first day of school, we talked about what those rules look like in your class, and we said one way to show respect is to raise your hand if you have something to say, and calmly wait for the teacher to call on you. That is one way that we control our impulses. Control our what? I'm sorry, Mrs. Bickerman, but that sounds like grown-up talk. Mrs. Bickerman smiled and said, "They are really big words, but what they mean is that sometimes our bodies are telling us to do things, and we have to decide whether or not we want to do them." Later on, Mrs. Bickerman pulled me aside, and she said, she asked, "When you shout out, saying we are going to talk about how awesome you are, what were you thinking?" "Well, I thought it would be really funny." "Right, but did that make the situation better or worse?" I sat there for a second, and then I sighed and said, "Worse." Mrs. Bickerman explained that there are times to be funny and times to be serious at school. She asked me, "When is it a good time to be funny at school?" "I don't know, maybe lunch, recess, and free time?" "Right. Maybe lunch after we eat, not while we're trying to eat." Mrs. Bickerman gave me a card with 4 easy steps to follow before saying or doing anything. In our class, number 1, stop what you are doing. Number 2, think about what you are going to say or do. 3, decide if it will make the situation better or worse. Number 4, choose the behavior that makes the situation better. This didn't seem too hard. I told Mrs. Bickerman I was sorry about what I did, and I would think before doing things from now on. Later that day in PE, we were playing a new dodgeball game. The only rules were you could not hit the kids in the face, and you could not go on the other team's side. My team was ahead, and things were going great. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Amanda sneak over to our side and hit one of our players with the ball. Like a cheetah, I sprinted over to Amanda and threw the ball right at her face. Don't think the PE teacher's happy. Just as the ball was about to hit her, the coach called out, "Brayden, get over here right now." I saw Amanda on the floor crying and knew this was not going to end well. Then I heard the same words again. "What were you thinking?" I explained how I was mad Amanda cheated, and that's why I hit her with the ball. Coach did not look happy. and he told me I needed to control my impulses. Coach asked if hitting Amanda with the ball made the situation better or worse. Worse, I whispered. It did not help. He pulled out the tips card from Mrs. Vickerman and asked if I followed any of the steps. I realized I didn't even follow step number 1. Stop what you are doing. Controlling my impulses might be harder than I thought. That day when I got home, my parents already knew about what happened at school. My mom and dad said we would be practicing controlling our impulses at home and that they had a copy of the card Mrs. Vickerman gave me. Oh, great, I sighed. With all that happened at school, I was surprised to see Mom was making cupcakes for me. As soon as they were cooling off on the counter, I went in like a hungry bear. Yum! I ate 12 cupcakes and then had a huge tummy ache. Mom came in, looking shocked, and asked, "What in the world happened to your brother's birthday cupcakes for his class?" Uh-oh. Maybe those weren't for me? Brayden, you know you were supposed to ask permission. And with everything that happened at school today, what were you thinking? I was thinking about how good they would taste. Did eating those cupcakes make the situation better or worse? Well, they did taste good, I mumbled. I'm sure they did, but overall, did that make the situation for you, your brother, and me better or worse? Worse, I said as I lowered my head. We went over the card that Miss Vickerman had given me again. On top of that, I had to help Mom make more cupcakes instead of playing my favorite video game. Not a fun night. Why were those 4 steps so hard to follow? A few days later at school, it finally clicked. I was being my usual hilarious self with my friends at lunch. We were having a great time. Then I felt something mushy and wet smack me in the back of my head. A kid from another class threw some Jell-O at me, and his whole class was laughing. I immediately thought he just messed with the wrong person. Time to teach him a lesson. I grabbed some of my mashed potatoes, and I got ready to throw the mashed potatoes as a fastball at his head. I reached my arm way back, and to get full speed, as my arm was about to go forward, I stopped. I got this weird picture in my head of that card. I asked myself, is this going to make the situation better or worse? I knew the answer, and although it was hard, I decided to just raise my hand over my head and get the teacher's attention. Mrs. Vickerman came over and I explained what happened. She went and talked to the other boy, and he had to go to the principal's office to finish his lunch. Whoa! Was I just able to control my impulse? This made me feel good about myself. Later that day, in class, Mrs. Vickerman pulled me aside and she said, "I noticed you had mashed potatoes in your hand when you raised your hand during lunch today. Something tells me you weren't planning to eat those." I smiled and said, "Yeah, I was going to hit that boy in the head with them, but decided it would be better to talk to you about it since it's one of the rules of the cafeteria." She laughed and said, "So what were you thinking?" "I was thinking I'm sick of getting in trouble, and for once I wanted to make the right choice." "That's great! And your good choice did make the situation better this time. You even followed the 4 steps." "Yep," I said. Maybe I was becoming an impulse expert. I want to stay out of trouble. That night, when I got home, my parents asked my brother and me to pick up our toys, and he just left his remote control car, the one he never lets me play with, right in the middle of the floor. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I thought for just a second that this might be a good time to take my brother's remote control car and hide it in my closet. But then again, would an impulse expert do that? I knew what the right thing to do was. So I walked to my brother's room and gave him his remote control car. And my brother said, "Thanks a lot, booger brain." At first I got mad, and then I just laughed. I may be becoming an expert in controlling my impulses, but I'll never to be able to control my brother. What a great book. I loved the 4 steps that his teacher gave him. And I think a lot of us, maybe even Mrs. Leaphart, could practice. Stop what you were doing. Think about what you're going to do or say. Decide if it's going to make the situation better or worse. And choose the behavior that will make the situation better. What a great list. I hope you have a great rest of the week. Bye.